Yeah. Woo. Ooh. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.
Well, hello, FC Dallas curious fans. Welcome to another edition of Third Degree, the podcast. I'm Buzz Carrick. Both Peter and Dan are not with me today. I am, in fact, flying solo, so bear with me and hopefully my voice holds up. Peter is doing some things for the ticket, which involves early morning, so it's tough for him, and Dan is out of town on a family event. So it's just me, and this is why we're doing this Q&A edition. Before I start the Q&A, let me remind you that Third Degree the Podcast is brought to you by Soccer90. You can get 40% off site-wide for all Third Degree podcast listeners with the promo code Third Degree on Soccer90.com. That's just like the name of the website, 3RDDEGREE dot. You don't need the dot, just Third Degree. Hopefully you guys have took advantage of that. It's been great for them to support us over this holiday window. And hopefully you guys got yourself some good swag. Make us look good. All right. As I mentioned, today is a Q&A edition of the podcast. I'm going to answer a whole bunch of questions that I got from my patrons. And then I solicited questions on Twitter and on Facebook. And we got a lot of stuff to run through, and I'm going to do my best to answer. Obviously, the FC Dallas questions are in my wheelhouse. Things that are a little out of that area, I'll do my best. And you can take what I say as an opinion if you don't like it. But I think I got some good things to offer you. All right, let's get right into the questions. I'm going to start with the Patron questions because, they're the ones who support us on patreon.com/third degree. You can always join us there too if you like. We give some little extra content there for people to follow us, but mostly it's just if you like what we do. All right, first question is from Sean. No last name. We saw Reynolds get stuck on the bench behind Reggie, who was sold, but clearly Reynolds was ready to go when he got the opportunity. What other young players appear ready to go but stuck behind a veteran? Well, Sean, I would have said Kyle Montgomery, but he's gone. So is Johnny Nelson a young player for you? Because Johnny is definitely stuck behind Ryan Hollingshead. Johnny's a defensive first player, which is fine, and Lucci wants an attacking outside back. If you gave Nelson the job, half a season in, I think he'd be fine as an attacking option. He's just not there yet. And right now, the way Ryan Hollingshead is playing, there's no way Johnny Nelson's getting in there ahead of him. Ryan is also now 29 going on 30, I think. So, there's a chance down the line for Johnny to be a starter, I think. So he's the guy. Also, Tanner Tessman and to a certain extent Brandon Cervania now are both stuck behind Brian Acosta when he's healthy. Brian Acosta's a World Cup veteran. He's a DP player. He almost certainly is going to start for Lucci when he's healthy. So you could say that both those guys are now stuck behind Acosta. Pepe, he's not stuck. He's not ready to start 32 games, so that's not stuck. And that's really basically my list. Thomas Roberts is ready for some PT, but he's not ready for a starting run like Pepe isn't either. So Johnny Nelson, Tessman, Cervania. All right, Dan Vescia asked, with Zoback and Philippe both being fairly good backups, in quotes, which one, if either, will be sent down to North Texas Soccer Club? Well, not Philippe. He's too big of a player to be doing that. Also, he's going to spend most of the year with Brazil in preparation for the Olympics, or a lot of the year, I should say. I don't think you'll see him in Dallas all that much. Maybe even as much as 50% of the time he'll be gone. Could they send him down for some minutes? Like if he comes back, sure. But it's not going to be a thing where they're going to invest playing time in him, in that sense of getting a whole run. Zoback also, again, if they really feel like he needs some minutes, maybe, but at 30, they're not going to invest in him either. So neither guy is going to go down and play this season at North Texas. They might just get a little bit of minutes to get them fresh or something. Or if they get injured, come back from an injury. All right. Eric Tillish, hopefully I got that right, Eric, has two questions. Number one, do you think there is a possible moves for Bayern that makes sense for them to loan a player to FC Dallas? No, I don't. Guys in Bayern's first team are worth too much money. The thing that makes sense to me for them is if they have a player who graduates from their U23 team but isn't good enough for Bayern. I mean, think about how good Bayern is, and they probably crank out 20 guys a year out of their U23 team, 21 of which go nowhere. So if one of those guys is just barely not good enough for Bayern, sending him to FC Dallas could make some sense. If you want to maybe try and put a little investment in him to sell him on later, that's the only thing I think can happen. We'll have more on Bayern later in this thing for sure. I know I got more questions about that. Question 2, is there any possible way to loan Hara like Pablo Aranguiz last year to clear him off the roster if another DP9 can be transferred in? Well, technically, Eric, yes. Realistically, though, that's probably a no. You know, these clubs in Mexico watch tape too, and they see what we see. So who's going to take that guy on such a massive, massive salary? I mean, he's not Mexican, he's Argentine. So it's like, there's not like that kind of pull. So basically, like, in order for FCD to do such a deal, they're going to have to pay a significant portion of his contract, you know, maybe half, maybe even most of it. So you're basically giving him away for free just to get rid of him. I don't see that really as a viable. The best option is the limitedly used DP buyout. The Hunts could spend their own money to buy out Hara's contract. But the Hunts being the Hunts, I'm pretty sure Hara's going to be here for 2021 and 2022. All right, Fritz Junker asked, best case and most likely scenarios for the new FCD away kits. Best case scenario is a solid non-white kit, hopefully with mismatched shorts. So you're looking at, you know, not going to be red or not going to be navy blue, because those are the two primaries for the first team kit. I'm hoping it'll be a solid kit. This is the best case scenario, solid kit, non-dark. That doesn't leave a lot of options, but there are some options. For me, the best answer would be a white and color hoops, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think FCD will always keep one jersey non-hoop because there's people that don't like hoops. You know, it's fine. So best case scenario, solid, non-white. That's best case. Okay, Tim Langston asks, are we seeing a potential pipeline partnership between FCD and Juventus? Or is it the beginnings of an FCD Academy world recognition? Well, you're not seeing a FCD to UV pipeline specifically. It's just the worldwide love of talent. Look, talent is talent. What the U.S. has that European teams sometimes don't, and FCD Dallas has, is they don't have guys that are 6'3", amazing athletes with pace and power. This is why they buy Alphonso Davies. You know, this is Reynolds. This is Chris Richards. It's probably Tessman and Dante Sealy. These are the guys that are going to be coveted and that the European teams are going to want. It's nothing to do with a relationship between FCD and Juventus. It's just recognition of talent. Definitely true that around the world, people are recognizing MLS and America in general and FCD specifically. That's for sure true. All right, Trent Dismuke. Do I have that right, Trent? Some of these names I've seen a million times. I've never pronounced them. Dismuke. All right, North Texas Soccer Club has brought in some foreign players the past 2 years with the pandemic still going strong. Do you think they will bring in players for 2021? Yes, absolutely, for sure. Yeah. Bringing in foreign kids age 18 to 22 to take a shot at them is part of the FC Dallas North Texas Soccer Club mojo. These are kids that somebody else didn't want at 18, but that Dallas thinks is worth a flyer, that they could be good enough for MLS or maybe USL or for another country or something. You know, so these are guys that they think maybe are diamonds in the rough. North Texas Soccer Club is a pretty cheap situation. They have apartments and they have 2 houses they can put these kids in if they're young. There's going to be 3 or 4 new ones. They already got one, Hope Kodzo. There's going to be more, 3 or 4, maybe even 5. They need a lot of bodies this year. Okay, John Garcia, any news on a primary sponsorship? I'm sure COVID threw a wrench in the sponsorship plans. No, I don't think it would have, actually. I'm sure that whatever sponsorship deal they had was wrapped up a year ago, effectively. Kit design is a 15-month or more cycle. Like, for example, like right now, the kit for 2022 has been approved. Not the one for 2021, the one that you're going to see in a month. I mean, the one for the new home jersey for 2022 has been approved. They started working on it middle of this year, if that makes sense to you, 15 months. So I imagine that whatever sponsorship deal was in place has been in place. So yes, we here at Third Degree have pooling our information. We think it's going to be NEC, who is the big sponsor of the Hall of Fame, there in the south end zone. Don't rule out Toyota, of course, or any of the big club sponsorships that are, already primary sponsors. We all think we here think it's more likely to be a current sponsor elevating, and NEC is our favorite, based on some stuff. It's hard to really explain, what all led us to that opinion, but it's a consensus here from Third Degree. All right, Luke Hoke asked a rambling, long-winded question about players playing out of, I'm going to paraphrase Luke, sorry. Players playing out of position rather than their intended position. Do people watching, do they take this into account? Do you value a player? The example he uses is Weston McKennie, and people scouting Pepe. Are they going to be worried that these guys are used out of position? And one example might be, what if Weston would have signed, hypothetically, he says, for FC Dallas for a year and then later been asked to play left back or something? Would that have greatly derailed a career opportunity? Well, yeah, it does hurt, actually, in my opinion, if you do it too much. If you're just getting a guy some minutes, which is what happens when Pepe's at wing, for example, that's fine. It's okay. If you do it a lot, then you see what I think you saw with Jesus last season, 2020 season, this season just passed, where he starts to lose his way a little bit because where are you playing me? What am I doing? Where's my future? The one caveat to this situation is that the full, complete position change, like Brian Reynolds to right back, that really only happens if the club feels a player has stalled a little bit in their progression, or a lot in their progression. A guy that was a really quality player that has a whole bunch of attributes you like, all of a sudden, as a 10 or a 9 or a winger, all of a sudden he's not quite working like you want. And you see something in his game that says, oh, I could use him somewhere else. Like Brian Reynolds was a right wing, and they realized that when he comes from deep and gets ahead of steam run at people, he's almost impossible to stop. That was sort of his bellwether moment. Edwin Surreal was a wing at one point, and then moved into the U19 team, and they made him a 6, and he came to life as a 6. It just sort of, he was not really working as a wing. Jonathan Gomez was a wing and was just kind of an average wing. And they took his talent set and they turned him into a left back, and he's an exceptional left back. So you're only going to see those little now and then for a change is fine. You don't see a big full change unless it's someone who's not progressing. Now, something like Jesus, way out of position all the time, that's a Lucci trust thing. I really wish he wouldn't do it as much, because I do agree with you that it hurts their standing. I still think it hurts Jesus. All right, Fabian Mejia, perhaps. If the MLS and Liga MX ever merged, do you feel that would answer most of FC Dallas attendance issues? Are you in favor of the merger? I feel like it would be awesome to watch. I struggle watching MLS matches unless FCD is playing. Not sure what your thoughts are. Okay, no, it would not solve any clubs, let alone Dallas's individual attendance problems. Yes, I am in favor of it, because this is the kind of deal that could elevate our league, now combine MLS, Liga MX, to like a world-class league, because, and this is the key, and this is why I think it will happen, this is an ownership level deal where guys are investing millions of dollars into these clubs, 300 million, 500 million. They see a way to empower their teams and enrich their teams. Big money, big TV, big marketing, big media, huge, massive amount of people in Mexico and the United States and Canada. You basically are creating a North American Super League. It's the same reason that in Europe, the big teams want to form a breakaway league. Are they ever going to be able to pull it off? I don't know. The game's so ingrained there. It's what makes the Champions League so huge, and all those big clubs want so badly to be in their own league together. It's that idea that you can really elevate your play. So for a North American league, you can take Liga MX and MLS and Canada to a certain extent from being like a mid-tier thing to maybe a top tier thing, because the money could get crazy, the audience could get crazy, the TV could get crazy. That's why it's going to happen, and that's why I think it's a good idea that it happens if you want to make the United States have pro soccer at the highest level possible. I think it's important. All right, Rafael Mantana says, have you been to a World Cup? Have you been to games abroad? What is your dream trip game? I have been to the World Cup, Rafael. I went to 3 games at the Cotton Bowl in 1994. I had just graduated from college. I went to the 3-2 Germany-South Korea game, which was a great German comeback. And then for the Argentina-Bulgaria game, I sat in the section next to the Argentine fans who were just absolutely crazy. And I actually have a picture of Bulgaria scoring on a header at the other end of the field. It's really hard to tell what it is. I think it's actually a Stoichkov goal. I'm not sure. It's a header goal. And I have the picture right as the guy heads it on my little bitty camera from 100 yards away across the end of the field. And then in the round of 16, I went to Saudi Arabia versus Sweden, which is a 3-1 Sweden win. And then in 1998, I went to France with my dad to go to all 3 U.S. games, and we tramped around Europe a bunch between games. So we went to the 2-0 Germany loss, and then the 2-1 loss to Iran, which, by the way, is one of the craziest moments of my life. They had the streets barricaded off for like a mile in every direction around the stadium. You had to walk in a mile. And there were snipers on top of the light towers. And it was just, what a surreal moment in my life that was. And then the third game, 0-1 Yugoslavia, when Sam's Army was famously singing Que Sera Sera, we're going home in 3. That was a fun moment, even though we got smoked. So I had this plan at the time to go to every World Cup from then on. And unfortunately, 2 months before the 2002 World Cup, I changed jobs and was unable to go. I had to sell my tickets and cancel my trip. So I have not been to one since, unfortunately, which is a bummer for me. Dream trip. I'm a Newcastle fan outside of FC Dallas. So I would love to go to some games at St. James Park. That's my dream trip. And just in general, going to England and even like tramping around some lower level stuff. I mean, that would be fun. That's my ideal of a dream vacation. All right, Greg Carmichael. My question is, with the growth of the league and some of the big money that has come in, do you realistically think FC Dallas can win the Cup in the next 10 years? I see a model where FCD spends, but on the frugal side, frequently miss where they do spend, make the playoffs, but at a low level and can't compete with the big dogs. Any reason to think a change is likely that would make us front runner for the Cup? Greg, you're going to be disappointed. Realistically, yes. The FC Dallas could be in contention for a Cup, and I'll tell you why they could be and then why they won't be. Number one is all it takes is for the Hunts to raise their game just a little bit, because the academy model and the homegrown fill-in allows you to have a better roster than most people year after year after year, because the quality fill-in from the academy balances out some of the gaps that other teams that don't have academies have, because you're not relying on the draft. So other teams sign foreign players, but Dallas has foreign players and the academy. So all you need is a little bit more raise of the level on the DP spend. Now, how likely is that? I mean, listen, Greg, you know as well as I do, the Hunts are going to hunt, right? I mean, this is what they do. They bargain spend. They look for bargains. They look for hits. The Reynolds sale is going to be a big test. We'll see what they do with this money. This is a big question, because you're right. The top of the league is extending away from FC Dallas in terms of the money spend. This is going to be, the next 10 years for Dallas are going to be fascinating. See what they do. Certainly the next year will be interesting. All right, Reagan Rector. Forgive me if my voice starts to go in the middle of this. There's a lot talking here. Any thoughts on the early Vegas lines for MLS Cup that had FCD as a favorite? Not sure if this was legit, but would like your thoughts on what would constitute successful 2021? Okay, first thing to understand about Vegas lines is that Vegas lines exist only to balance out the betting, to balance out the money. So whatever line is set is 100% a reaction to where people are betting. People are putting their money. So somebody thinks that FC Dallas has a shot next year and is putting some money down. Now, the odds makers put the number out there beginning with, but they're pretty good at predicting like where people are going to put their money. This is what they do. So I do expect that as we get closer to this season that FC Dallas's odds will drop, because I think some of this is the early money coming in because of things like Reynolds being sold and the money coming back in, and all the reports of Dallas is going to sign that guy, going to sign this guy. I think some of this is an early overreaction with money being bet on FC Dallas. I think it'll lengthen. Successful 2021, winning, further in the playoffs, higher in the standings, get to fourth, third, get a little more home field, advance. That's the progress. That's the progression. If they don't do that, then I will consider it a non-successful season. It'll be a step back. Let me put it that way. Justin Bittner says, how much longer do you think FCD will be able to enjoy the lead they built up in terms of the academy pipeline? It seems like other clubs have similar levels of talent coming in, Philly, Seattle, New York, LA, and could ultimately surpass FCD at some point. Do you think that's concerning for FCD long term, since that's really the only area the Hunts have invested? Well, no, not really, actually, because these kind of things have momentum, and FC Dallas has a head start in that sense. They recruit internationally. They've got micro academies other places. They go out and find guys and bring them into their academy. They recruit domestically outside of Dallas. They have a reputation for developing, not only just having players pass to the first team and play, but also get better while they're here, pass to the first team play, and then be sold. That's the key, is the willingness to be sold gives them a head start in terms of getting guys for the academy. And also, this is the thing that really gives them the advantage. Dallas is a talent hotbed. Even if you didn't do all those other things, there is bags and bags of talent here on its own. Like, look at the Dallas Texans and go look up the alumni from that club prior to FC Dallas. Your Daniel Hernandez, your Omar Gonzalez, Ramon Nunez. There's a pipeline of talent in Dallas. And so FC Dallas will always have that local advantage. Matter of fact, the other clubs in MLS that don't have a hotbed, it's not just Dallas, but there's other clubs that do too. LA, obviously, the fertile ground of California. The clubs that don't have those hotbeds bitch and complain to the league all the time. It's one of the reasons why people like RSL were allowed to have an Arizona academy and things like that. It's other teams that don't have these Dallas talent levels think that they're at a disadvantage. And that's, on some level, that's true. Now, you got to go out and work it, but that talent's always going to be in Dallas. Even Houston doesn't have that talent base that Dallas has. Houston's never produced like North Texas has. All right, Rex Darwin wants to know, what will preseason coverage look like in this pandemic? Well, honestly, Rex, that's going to depend on MLS and FC Dallas protocols. It's likely that it's going to look exactly like this season looked. Zoom calls, doing what we do the best that we can. If something happens in terms of allowing me to go to training, if it means me getting a vaccine, if it means me something like that, if they loosen some protocols in some other way, then absolutely I'll go back to training. I'll go on the preseason trips if I can pull them off, drive in my car like I've done in the past, go cheap. All those things are possible. It's 100% on MLS and FC Dallas and their protocols and what they allow. I'm hoping that a vaccine will get me access. We'll see. All right, Eric Pipolis. Eric, I've actually never, this is another one of your names I've seen a million times and never heard pronounced. Pipolis? Hopefully that's right, man. What would be the holdup on a Dineno signing? Is it just the holidays, or was that really just a mirage? I'm pretty sure, I'm very confident that FC Dallas is going to sign somebody, that the window is not open, and that they're counting on the Reynolds money to be used to sign a DP. The two guys they signed are not DPs. They're TAM GAM signings. So they have an open DP spot. So holidays is a little slow down. Now, is it Dineno? I don't know. Honestly, I've only gotten the one nibble on Dineno here, which is one more than I've gotten on anybody else other than the two guys they've announced. So it's, honestly, I have no idea if it's going to be Dineno or not. I really can't tell you. FC Dallas has done a really good job the last several years of keeping those things on lockdown. And I honestly don't know if it's Dineno or not. Dineno for me fits because I think they could use a high 9, which he is. And I'm 100% convinced that they're going to sign a DP with the Reynolds money. How big a DP and how much money? That's a good question. Don Garber said something about $33 million wouldn't be enough to reduce every team's losses. I think Dallas is more frugal than most. So they probably lost less money than most. The 10 million, whatever it's going to be for Reynolds, is going to go a long way to eat up that loss. So maybe they're not going to spend what they might have been willing to spend before. But I think they're going to sign another DP. I think they won't sit without one. Sometimes in the past, they've had like 6 or 7 guys that were above the DP threshold, and they just bought them all down because they just barely get by guys over the DP threshold. So I'm expecting one more signing. All right, patron Niedermeyer says, are you an Animal House fan, Niedermeyer? He has a couple of questions. Oh, my goodness, Niedermeyer. Okay, well, this one's fascinating in light of today. As of recording this, the night of the Reynolds stuff. Okay, how do you balance being objective and critical of FCD on the one hand with needing to maintain access to the club? To be brutal about it, the answer is by being professional and accurate. This is why I said it's interesting given the Reynolds stuff today. If what you say is true, it's hard for them to really do anything or say anything. The leagues have media standards. If you adhere to the media standards and don't break the rules, like one example would be this year they banned all media from the compound completely, not the field, not the training field, like the whole complex. So we couldn't even go up there for any reason at all, basically. So we didn't risk that. We didn't risk them giving someone an excuse, if they had a problem with us for some reason. Like, I don't know that they have a problem with us specifically from game to game, from time to time. Occasionally, they for sure don't like stuff we do. PR frequently can't stand what we do because they don't like it when we break news. But that's always been true of the PR people. But one thing that's really important is that watching training matters. Being up there and seeing what's happening. Like, if you're going to talk smack about who played or why a club does something, or register your opinion, I shouldn't say smack, register your opinion about who's ready or who's not, or why they played this way or why they didn't. If you're not watching training, you're just blathering. You have to watch what they're doing. You have to talk to coaches, and you have to watch how players are progressing. And I'll tell you that every single coach that has ever been the head coach of FC Dallas, and all the assistants too, they've always respected what I do because I go to training. I've had numerous of them mention to me flat out, I don't always agree with you, but you come up here and you watch and you get credit for that, which is why it's so bad for me personally that I can't go up there right now, because it makes what I do much more difficult. And in the end, that's the bottom line, is if you act like a professional and behave like a professional, they do have media access rules in this league, and we are granted that access as part of the media. All right, second question from Niedermeyer. For some time, I've been hearing the 03 age group was the first to truly benefit from the Development Academy system start to finish, meaning that they all went from U12 or so with more training, 11 months a year, etc. Are we seeing or hearing anything about the 03 and younger age groups that give credibility to this idea? Have they benefited? Yeah, massively. I would 100% agree with that. There has been talent before from the academy, but look at this 03 group. Before you might have had one guy maybe, but this 03 group is Ricardo Pepi, Dante Seeley, Justin Che, Jonathan Gomez, who is now at Lou City and will probably go to Europe at 18, Diego Latafe, who's now at Tigres U20. And that's just the guys that we know about. There's still guys in college that have a shot. So there's no question that this 2003 group is like the first bubble group. Now, weirdly, 2004 is kind of across the Metroplex is thin. It's definitely thin for FC Dallas. Right now, Antonio Carrera, who's the keeper, and Nigel Carrera's younger brother, I think he has the best shot. But he may be later because he's not, it's a keeper. Those guys are later sometimes. So he may be down the road a few years. So it may end up being that there are no 2004s, which is weird. But 2005 and 2006 are just ridiculous. Those guys are even better than 2003s. And I just listed 5 guys that are on the pro pathway from the 2003s, and it could be more. The 05s and 06s I'm expecting an even bigger, I call it a homegrown bubble, because those two groups are ridiculous and they're getting better. They brought in, one of those teams brought in a guy from Solar this year. Every year they add people. I mean, the talent was ridiculous. And being in the system and practicing the same methodology in the same way, in the same system, in the same skill sets from, the beginning of the academy level through to now, huge advantage. Huge advantage for those kids. It's the difference between kids that can walk into the pro game ready versus kids coming out of college not ready. It's massive. And then I got another question from Nina Wire that I actually got from somebody else too. And so I'm going to combine them and answer Jeff T's question because it's the same question. You've addressed some individual things you like and dislike about Lucci, but I'd like to hear your overall assessment of where he stands. What criteria do you use to evaluate him for him long term? Is it just wins and losses? And that's basically what Niedermeyer asked was, what does Lucci need to do to keep his job? Or is he safe? Okay, this is big picture. It's important to remember, and I think he's in very good shape. It's important to remember that Lucci is a product of two men as coaches. His number one influences are Oscar Pareja and Shellis Hyndman. Lucci is literally the byproduct of the guys who the Hunts trust the most. They built the system, the academy, when Shellis was coach. Oscar built it. Hyndman has been friends of the Hunts for 30 years. They played for him. Lucci played for him. Lucci cites Pareja, who gave him his job in the academy. I mean, he is FC Dallas Lucci. So he's as safe as you could possibly be, honestly. As long as he keeps making the playoffs, I think that he's basically safe forever. Winning an MLS Cup, remember for the Hunts, they don't say this, but I think their behavior indicates this. To them, their behavior says winning an MLS Cup is a bonus. It's not the requirement. They care about the Lamar Hunt legacy. Look at the Hall of Fame. They care about the franchise stability and the survival of the franchise and Lamar Hunt's legacy over everything. Lamar Hunt, U.S. Open Cup. Lamar Hunt in the Soccer Hall of Fame. Soccer Hall of Fame here. This is their last MLS team. They've gotten rid of the other two. Well, they got rid of all three they had originally. The survival of this team and their system, what they believe in now, is everything. So keep making the playoffs. Keep the academy line flowing. The one way they make money, the youth, the selling of the players so far make money. Keep that going and you're fine. That's what I think it is. It's simple. All right, now I'm going to lump a group of questions together because they're all basically about the same thing. Reagan Rector asked, if there's one thing you could do in the market to produce fans in the stands in the community, what would it be? Andres Soto asked, in a hypothetical scenario, the Hunts give you $10 million over 2 years to improve the fan base. What would you do? Alex Avendano said, will FC Dallas ever get consistent sellouts? Michael Mortensen said, what has Dallas done wrong trying to bring fans to Fisco? And if you're charged, what would you do differently? And Cisco asked, it's pretty clear that Austin FC is going to blow FC Dallas and Houston out of the water. If you were the owner, what would you do to compete? And specifically, Austin said they're focusing on the Hispanic audience, something Dallas has not done well. And he actually mentions Janet Sanchez, which is important. I'll get that to the second. How do you bring back the Hispanic audience? So I'm going to lump all that in together because I think it's all one connected answer. And the first thing that I would do if they gave me money and I was in charge was I would spend a couple $1 million, maybe even half that $10 million possibly, to do a supreme, in-depth, legit, 100% deep dive into what the Metroplex soccer market is. This would be a massive, massive undertaking, and it would cost a lot of money. The Hunts have never done anything like this as far as I know. And listen, we talk to people in these neck of the woods about these kinds of things, and I don't know them doing this at all. You guys have all done season ticket surveys. This is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a big time $1 million dive into what the Dallas soccer market is. Not their fan base, not their ticket buyers, the whole market, the whole audience. Find out what it really is made of, find out what it really cares about, and then adapt your strategy. Right now, their strategy is going off of what they think is right, rather than finding out what is actually right and basing your strategy off that. Beyond that, I don't have any specific answers other than I would treat the Spanish audience seriously. This could be simple, like on the digital side, make sure the entire website is available in English and Spanish across the board. Twitter accounts, social media, everything. Double up everything. Redundancy. The amount of money you'd spend on that, relatively speaking, would be little. And it would go a long way just having that personality, that multiple things. Now, that's not just enough because cultures are different. And you mentioned Janet Sanchez, who hasn't been replaced as a Spanish reporter. That's big. I would hire an on-air type talent, a young one, 2 of them actually, 1 English and 1 Spanish. Men, women, doesn't matter. 1 speaking English, 1 speaking Spanish. Bilingual would be fine, but I still want somebody that's Spanish only. And make original content in both languages because there are cultural differences. There's stuff that's important to the Spanish market that's not important to the English market, and vice versa. How you report to them, how you cover the game is different for those languages. And again, on top of that, I would advertise, and again, without a marketing study to know what you're doing, how do you spend money? But I would advertise in both languages, and I would try and get into the markets where people like soccer. How you do that is hard. It's not easy. That's why people get paid a lot of money to do these things. I don't have all the answers, but I think a real marketing study to find out where your audience really is and what they really want, and then trying to meet some of those things and treat Spanish seriously. Give it 100% attention, just like you give the English. I think that would go a long way. All right, Hans and Dad and Barefeet both sort of asked a similar kind of question about the force majeure that MLS just implemented with the MLS Players Union and what it means. Well, on a big picture macro level, what it means is they're going to go back to the table and renegotiate the CBA. Garber talked about the MLS losing $1 million. It's important to understand that probably some Soccer United marketing, who is interwoven with MLS in a symbiotic, weird way, is probably hosed this year too because those teams can't come. So there's a big revenue loss there. So, I don't doubt that they're down a whole crap ton of money. So MLS is going to want some of that money back. They're going to try and push back on this contract and try and get some things back that they gave up. So it could get contentious. I imagine that they don't want crazy things. I imagine they're just going to want like a percentage rollback of salary. MLS had to lay off like 20% of their staff. So, are they going to want 20%? Are they going to want 10%? I have no idea. Probably just across the board rollback. And maybe roll back on some things that the players wanted that cost money, like charter flights. Those could be toast. Those are really expensive. And MLS could say, we'll give them to you in 3 years rather than now. I don't know what it's going to be, but it means that they're going to go back to the bargaining table, and it means that they're going to not start over. I think there's going to be like 4 or 5 things the league's going to go, this is what we want. They'll ask for more than they think they're going to eventually get. It'll take some time. They might give up. The league might say, we'll start later in the year. If you give us X, Y, Z, maybe we'll go a shortened year again. We'll cut some games out this year. Again, maybe, I don't know. I'm ad-libbing now. Bottom line is they're going to renegotiate. Okay, Geraldo Cifuentes. Have you ever wondered if FD Dallas uses your ideas in games? Yes, actually. Once or twice I have wondered that. I don't really think that though, obviously. The people that run professional soccer teams are pretty smart soccer people. They don't get to that level by accident. They work their whole life to get to that level. So I'm quite sure that they come up with ideas simultaneously. A lot of my ideas come from talking to them, talking about concepts, talking about ideas, what they're doing. And sometimes I could watch a game and think about what they said about the game. And I'm like, oh, I wonder if that means they're going to try this or that or the other thing, and they come up with the same idea. So I don't really think they use my ideas, but there have been once or twice where something I said should happen, did happen. I thought, ooh, I wonder if they got that from me. Not really, you know what I mean? That's flattering thought, but probably not really. Oh, I do know the front office has borrowed my stuff though. Like Hoops is pretty much my fault. Not the name, the Hoops jerseys. Peter will tell you, I wrote an article about how they should use Hoops a couple of years before they did it. And I'm pretty sure that they borrowed that from me. But that's okay because I like the Hoops. Okay, Jordan Hofnagel had a bunch of questions. Let's see. Seeing as the roster as it is, with your choice of one additional player added per the rumors, what formation would you as a coach, not Lucci, you, play the team in and why? All right, well, to follow up on rumors, I would buy a 9. I would buy a DP buyout Franco Jara, and I would sell Brian Acosta. I think Brian Acosta has value. You can sell him to somebody. And the reason I'm willing to sell him is because they don't need him. They have plenty of guys that can play that spot. So I play a 4-3-3, and I use Paxton and Ricarte as dual eights with Tanner and Cervania behind them and Roberts. That works for me. I don't need Acosta. Get rid of Hara and bring in a 9. That's what I do. I like a 4-3-3 in a modern system. You get multiple versions of it, either the 4-3-3 base or 4-2-3-1. It's the same formation, just a flip midfield. All right, Jordan also asks, if and when Tessman gets the U.S. men's national team camp next year, what position in Barhalter's system do you think he would fit, and what are the chances of getting him to play there? And what do you think the best position is for him to get playing time? It's the same answer to those 2 things or 3 things, and it's Weston McKennie's linking 8 position, not the Adam 6, the linking 8 of Weston. So I think there's a chance Tanner could be in the mix at that spot. I don't think he's there for the senior team yet, but if the Olympics team is going to use the same system, which they should, I think there's a really good chance Tanner might be your starter for the Olympics, or at least way up in the Olympics team squad. He is just 19, so that's kind of young. So maybe, he would have been the starter for the U20s if the U20 World Cup hadn't gotten canceled. But I think Tessman's got a good shot at the Olympic team right now as the McKennie linking 8. That's his spot. He's basically passed up Brandon Cervania for that spot with FC Dallas and the U.S. So, which is why Cervania's probably looking at Puerto Rico. All right, last question from Jordan. Does Jimmy Maurer deserve a U.S. men's national team call-up? No. He's too old. Okay, Holden Grant also had a couple of questions. Since there is now such a large gap in the homegrown pool, can we expect to see more signings like we've seen recently? I know you've talked about it before, the gap that is. How much is it going to affect the organization goal of being a selling team? Could we see them go after young talent like Felipe and grin them to sell? Well, it's not a massive gap. It's about a year or year and a half, bridging the 2004 gap. That's the gap. So the 2003s are all gone already, which means the U19s are basically gutted. Most of the U17, half the U17s is gutted already because the 04s are not really there. So Che was the last 03 basically. And so you're not going to see another teenager to the 05s. But that doesn't mean there won't be any homegrowns because they have college age homegrowns. So there's 1 or 2 guys in there over the next 2 years that I think could pan out, possibly 2. We'll see how that goes still. That's your Jordan Cano type signings of the past, that kind of guy. There's a guy I'll talk about in a minute who I think could fit that bill this year. Brandon Cervania was a college guy. Reggie Cannon was a college guy. Legit talent there. College guys, possible still. So Philippe, yes, foreign player signing to then move on. Yeah, absolutely. Philippe is a Zanata special in the sense that he knew a value and arranged a buy number. Can you get him into the Brazil and then sell him on? That's what that's about. That's exactly the kind of thing I think Dallas will try to do, replicating the academy system. Now, they've tried to do that in the past. Pablo Rangi's really young. Mosquera was fairly young. Fabian Castillo was 18. You can see that it doesn't always hit. You buy young with upside and see if it pays off. Most oftentimes, it doesn't pay off. So far, anyway. One of the reasons why they have Zanata is because of they want somebody they hope is going to pay that off more. We'll see. So yes, you're seeing more veteran signings. I think that's important, but I think you're still going to see this, and maybe you're going to see it more with North Texas, really, like Hope Kodzo, right? It's the equivalent of that. Foreign kids, 18 to 22. That's the same vein. Felipe, I think you'll see a couple of those guys, not a lot, but a couple. I think that's an answer in there somewhere for you, Holden. I'm going to combine Holden's other question with a question also from Ishmael Belkura. Ishmael said, can Corcoran become a starter at NTXSC, North Texas Soccer Club, this season? Ishmael says, Allison won't be a starter, and Cirillo definitely won't want to be stuck at North Texas again. And then this will lead me in a second to another question from Holden. So Corcoran, who I'll get to again, is not a starter yet. You have to realize that he's still 14 years old. He's still a U15. He's training with the 17s now, but he won't move to the U17s until this summer full time, I don't think. He might come up and play a little bit, but you're looking at, for him, a North Texas debut, I believe, later this year, the second half of this year, and probably not progression to a starter until 2022. I don't think. with North Texas. So I actually think Allison will be your starter this year because I agree with you. Edmund Cirillo will not want to come down again. So I think Ellison is mostly your starter with maybe a Cirillo and maybe late in the year some Corcoran. Right. Following along with that, Holden's other question was, are there any kids in the academy the fans should be excited about? And then Ross Green also asked the same question. Next homegrown prospects, those questions all kind of lumped together. Ross actually asked when is the next prospect. Well, when is the problem? As I said, there's a little bit of a gap coming. The next really exciting guys are in the bottom first year of the U17s, or there's two guys that are currently still U15. And I have some other ideas about this we'll explore later, but not in this podcast. Some stuff I'm going to write about over the next month. But the 6 guys I read about recently, Matthew Corcoran, who I just talked about, who's a holding mid, Diego Hernandez, who's a U17. He was the first 2005 to play with North Texas SE. He played 1 minute, but he trained with them last year. And Jordan Jones also trained with them, but did not play. Jordan Jones is interesting because he's the first 2005 to make a U17 camp. He's a big, strong, athletic linking mid, like Tanner Tessman, if that helps. So those guys are probably not this summer. They're probably next winter, maybe, or the summer after that. Antonio Carrera, I've talked about a lot. Win on him is just whenever they decide he's a pro. It could be in a year. It could be in 4 years. It could be never. I think he's a pro. If they don't get it done when he turns 18, I think he'll be gone. So he's got about a year before them to decide, but it could be many years before he actually were to play for FC Dallas anyway, because 18-year-old keepers are, whoa. The other guys are Antonio Ramirez, who's also U17, but I talked about him. He's the one that's a pure 10, which is a system fit problem. He's also one of the youngest guys in that class. His birthday's in December, so very likely that he almost really is a 2006 instead of a 2005 because of his age, how young he is. So he might be later down the line, even further, like 2023 maybe, along with Julian Eystone, who's the 6'5", 14-year-old goalkeeper. That's ridiculous. Those guys are the ones that are like the protect your investment, homegrown. Those are your Paxtons, your Jesuses, your not Tanner because he didn't sign until he was 18 out of the academy. But those are the guys that are most likely for teenagers. But again, they're all a year off probably, maybe 2 years off. That's the gap. That's the 04 gap I was talking about. All right, Holden Grant has another question. If the homegrowns do start to make a decent amount of money, I think I read that wrong. If HSG does start to make a decent amount of money off of young talent selling them, can we see an uptick in spending and more buying power from SCD? Yeah, actually, I believe so. Reynolds is a good bellwether test of this. The Reynolds sale, if it does hit the $10 million roughly, that it's going to be sale price. There's going to be some incentives there. You know how these things are. They always have clauses that the price could rise, whatever. If they invest that money back and buy somebody, it won't be the whole amount, but if they buy somebody for half that amount or whatever, that'll be a good test to tell you whether they are going to actually follow through and invest that money back. I think they will. I think they'll invest it in a player, in a DP. It'll be the first time Dallas, I think, will buy a DP that costs, $4 or $5 million. I think that's their push up. They've done 2 before, right? I mean, it wasn't Costa. Costa was 2, I think, right? And wasn't Coleman 2. I think they'll push more towards a 4 or 5 with this Reynolds money. We'll see. If they don't, that'll be very telling. Okay. Another double question. Holden asked questions everybody else asked. So Holden Grant again and Alex Avendano both asked about an NWSL team in the Metroplex or WPSL for FCD. Same question. Has there been any movement? Holden asked. No, actually there hasn't, Holden. This is more of a Dan Crook topic, but if I have things right, FC Dallas's women's team, their former WPSL team, or whatever it was, NWSL. I can't even keep those 2 leagues apart. I suck. That team was created basically by the people that run the women's academy, the girls' academy, the ECNL, and the academy program. They created that team to have their college age players have a place to play in the summers. It's kind of like PDL or USL2. It's like that. They were allowed to brand it FCD Women because it's an extension of that program, but FCD Dallas supports it very little. I mean, I think at one point they didn't even give them kits. The last year I think they gave them kits, but that was about it really. They did not support that club very well, and that really is why it doesn't exist anymore. It's just basically there are other teams that are running independently that can fill the same role, and Dallas isn't going to spend that money. Essentially, I mean, I'm speaking for them in this case. Their behavior again points to the fact that it doesn't look like they want to spend money on a girls' game, which is a shame. I think there's a responsibility there as the head pro team in town. I think you should run a women's team at the highest level. But I get it. It's a lot of money. It's expensive. I mean, FC Dallas doesn't make a profit. Why should we think they should do that with the women's game? I guess. All right. Melanie Isbell says, are you related to Jason Isbell, by the way? Love Jason Isbell. All right. Who is your favorite all-time FC Dallas player and why? Jason Kreis is my favorite all-time player. Watching him play stylistically, he's very similar to my all-time favorite player, period, and that's Joe Max Moore. Guys that are kind of similar, slightly undersized, off-striker, creative, dangerous, works hard, plays the game hard, intense, focused, driven. Guys that are an amazing combo of American skill and style, very American players, which, that's what I am. So Jason Kreis, FC Dallas, Joe Max Moore, period. Those are my favorite two guys to watch play. All right, Stephen A. Jones says, can we get an overview of assets available for free agency? No. He says the club has a lot more money than ever. Well, yeah, I mean, that's kind of true, but I'm sorry, Stephen, you can't, I don't have a list because the problem is that FC Dallas uses tiny little bits of TAM and GAM all over the place. In the past, they've had 7 or 8 guys that are over the DP level that they buy down. So that's a little bit here, a little bit there. And then they use the same thing on homegrowns. They buy down homegrowns to put them on the supplemental roster. A little bit here, a little bit there. They spend a little bit on a transfer. They spend a little bit on a salary. It's just legitimately impossible to track, how much they've spent. Even if you could track how much they have gotten, knowing how much they spent is virtually impossible unless you could get inside numbers. I just don't think it's possible, my man. I'm sorry. Probably not the answer you wanted. All right, Danny Turner says, do you know much about Martinez and feel he will fit into MLS pretty quickly? Is he an upgrade from Ziegler? Well, he's not going to be an upgrade in pure soccer terms because Ziegler is a wonderful player. Skillful, played in 2 World Cups, but he's 34, going on 35. That's the problem. It's not that he wasn't a good soccer player. It's just that he's old. So Martinez, coming out of the Barcelona system, is 27 in the prime of his career. So in terms of pure soccerness, it should be about the same. But at 27, he should be more athletic and quicker. Even if he's just a medium speed player, he'll be quicker than Ziegler because Ziegler was really slow at this point. So that's my hope. I can tell you that from the tapes we've watched and coming from the system he comes from, he will have a good qualities for Lucci ball. You remember Barcelona plays the same system that Lucci wants to play, give or take. Tiki-taki, press, Pep Guardiola, right? All the same stuff. So good feet, good passer, lefty, good for Lucci ball, we think. So should be a good fit. On paper, good fit. We'll see, my man. We'll see. I'm curious myself. I like the signing. We'll see. All right, Johnny Football asks, Andre Zanotto worked with big teams in Brazil, and I assume is well compensated by FCD, but so far the only signing we've seen Brazil has been Felipe. You think his Brazilian connections will come into play? Well, Johnny, that's not 100% correct. Zanotto was on the other side of the table for the Bressan deal. He was at Grêmio at the time, and he's the one. That's where FC Dallas learned of him and decided they liked him. And then after the Bressan deal, they tried to hire him. So Thiago Santos, for example, is a Zanotto deal. His brother, Zanotto's brother, worked at Palmeiras. So that's how they knew that Zanotto was Thiago Santos was available, and Zanotto facilitated that deal. Felipe, obviously, you mentioned that. Franco Jara, that's a Dan Hunt deal. Andres Ricarte, even though he was scouted by one of their scouts, I believe, out of Colombia, that's a Zanotto deal. They were working on it for this winter, and they decided to move it ahead and bring it in the middle of the year. Ricarte. So I give that one to Zanata too. But I'm sure we're going to see this pay off more. Don't forget Zanata worked for Traffic, which is the Miami-based agent, player, owner, scouter, facilitator, talent group. So he knows lots of people. I think you're going to see more things come through that'll fit his wheelhouse. You'll recognize as his deals, other than those ones that I just mentioned that are already his. Thiago Santos, Felipe, Ricarte. I think those are all for him. Both these two new deals are his. Martinez and Hadar, O'Brien. Okay, Joseph, no last name, says, does Roberts go to Hibernian? What about Cervania or Cirillo to USLC loan? Well, Roberts is going to go somewhere, I think. I'm very convinced of that. He's looking for an opportunity to play, and I don't blame him. He's the one pushing those loan deals. So it may not be Hibernian. It may not be Hibbs. It'll be somebody. Cervania and Cirillo are both excellent candidates for loans too. But I'm not convinced that FC Dallas believes in the USLC loan anymore. The problem is when you go on a USLC loan, you lose control of the coaching system. Is the player going to play? What kind of coaching is he going to get and that kind of thing. And Brandon Cervania for sure doesn't make sense as a USLC player. A foreign team would be better for him. Cirillo, yeah, sure. He needs to play North Texas, USLC, somewhere, anywhere. Just play the kid somewhere. But the USLC loan is not ideal. Sometimes it's better to be here in Dallas and train with Dallas and play with North Texas. Now, I admit I don't think Evan Cirillo or Brandon Cervania are going to do that. But like a foreign team, like a U23 foreign team, that might make more sense. That I would keep an eye out for that possibly more than a USLC team. Of course, they could just keep both guys here, but I think those two guys are actually excellent candidates that you've brought up for loans. Dante Sealy, I'd throw in that same lump. Even Ricardo Pepi. Dante Sealy and Ricardo Pepi, it wouldn't shock me to see loaned. I don't know anything, but either one of those guys moving out wouldn't shock me either. That's one of the things we're discovering is that playing time matters. We know this, right? We've known this for years. FC Dallas is learning too. Having those guys sit here and not play doesn't do anything. Doesn't do any good. All right, Marcus Wright. At least I think it's Marcus Wright. But Marcus Aurelius Wrightus, it must be Marcus Wright, says, if you can explain the visa players' need to get into Europe, UK, how do dual nationals differ from U.S. nationals, FIFA age restrictions, how U.S. call-ups help with gaining visas, etc. In my opinion, it's something that's not talked about enough. Okay, well, honestly, you could spend years studying this topic, and certainly we could spend hours explaining it. I'll try and condense it down some. The bottom line with the UK is it's crazy. They have a point system that at its core is based on how much you play for your country and your senior national team, how much you start, youth national teams, what country your current team is in. They have a tiering system. Unfortunately for MLS, the tiering system for them is very low because, the Brits think we suck. So, and then age is a factor in this. It changes some things depending on how old you are. It changes how much you need this or that. Dan is actually working on a story with Brian Reynolds as an example to show how it would be tough for Brian to get a UK work permit. We're going to use him as an example to walk through some of this stuff. Suffice it to say that their system is just so bizarre. But beyond that, you can't sign a deal until you're 18. Now, you can go as an academy player before that, but the whole family has to move for another reason. Like your parents have to get jobs there, and then you all can go there. And then it's like, oh, come play for the academy. You can't go for the academy. Does that make sense? I know that sounds like a technicality, but it is. The dual nationals thing is not, that just means you can play for two countries. What's important is two passports. Like for example, Brandon Cervania can play for Puerto Rico and the United States. These guys can play for Mexico and the United States. The two passports is the main thing. If you have a EU passport, then you can bypass the non-EU player numbers. Every league has a limit on the non-EU players. Before Bosman, it was usually 5. Like it used to be that in the UK, you could only have 5 non-British players on your team. In MLS, we have a leftover rule from this. It's the 8-player foreign limit. It used to be 5. Don Garber raised it to try and raise the level of the play in the league, and they've left it the same. This is what I talk about. You can't go backwards. They've left it at 8 since then. The idea is that you want more of your home country's players playing in your league. That was the original idea. So if you have an EU passport, and Justin Che is a good example of this. Justin Che has a German passport. So he can play for any team in the European Union as a European Union resident. That gives him massive, massive freedom. Thomas Roberts does not have a UK or EU passport. Brian Reynolds does not have an EU passport. If those guys want to go to teams, they have to use their non-EU exemptions, which are limited. That's one of the troubles with why Brian was going to maybe have to do a Cagliari loan or not, or what's he going to do. That is all up in the air with this hypothetical Juve move because he doesn't have an EU passport. He has to use a non-EU exemption. Makes it harder. So it's super complicated. Dante Seeley apparently has access to a TNT passport, I believe. That gives him some different flexibilities than a German one would. Because I've had people tell me that a TNT passport gives you some entrances into certain countries. I've never been able to verify that for sure. But certainly Dante Seeley gets looked at more than a lot of other guys for European stuff. He goes over there all the time on these training stints. Anyway, on to the next question. Jay Borner says, does the O'Brien transfer mean that FCD is sticking to a 4-3-3? No, not specifically. He has some skill sets that can be translated to other positions. You know, if you wanted to play 2 strikers, he could play, wide mid, maybe even wing back. Now it's important to understand, I think, with him that his estimated transfer value was around $500K. So he's more of this traditional fringish FCD buy where you're not guaranteed success. I mean, are you ever? But I wouldn't be betting my house on Jadir O'Brien, Darth Jadir. Spinning off that, though, I do think that FC Dallas is going to stick with a 4-3-3. I've talked before this winter about Paxton playing left wing, Pepe there a little bit, maybe Jesus. Hader, I think, is going to compete with Mikey Barrios at right wing, mostly. Not to say they won't love that, but Lucci does love to move guys around. Plenty of bodies now for a 4-3-3 there. Now, of course, as I say this again, if FC Dallas buys a high 9, ask me this question again, because if they buy a high 9, then I think that might be indicative that they're going 2 strikers. But right now, I'm sticking 4-3-3 until I see them do something radical. Just don't over expectations on Hadir O'Brien. I think you should temper that a little bit based on age and where he was playing and how much he costs. All right, Lance Little said, do players have an incentive to go to the FC Dallas Academy if teams start building with veterans or non-FCD players and promote 1 or 2 players every few years? Well, I kind of answered this earlier. I should have lumped it in. It's my fault. Yes, because FC Dallas sells you to Juve for 8 million euros, right? Or they sell you to Boa Vista or Bayern Munich. And that's the key. It's that FC Dallas has proven that they're willing to transition a player from the academy to MLS to Europe. It's a pathway. That's why Lucci talks about all the time. Developmental club. Now, are they working in a little more veterans in their system? Yeah, they are. That's true. Do they need to find more PT for these tweener guys that aren't like your Cirillos and your Roberts? Yeah, absolutely they do. But those are just details. That's some semantics of the system that they're still trying to iron out. The big picture, FC Dallas is a facilitator and a grower of players, develops you through the academy, gets you to the first team, plays you in the first team, and then sells you. That pathway is very, very enticing to the very top level of talent, the proven pathway to the pros. All right, Enrique asks, is it realistic for us to expect homegrown players like Paxton, Jesus, Brandon to be sold within 5 years? Do you anticipate them staying until we win a major trophy? Realistic, yes, very realistic. I think Brandon Cervania and Evan Cirillo may be MLS level players, but within 5 years, I would expect Paxton, Jesus, Seeley, Roberts, Tessman, and Pepe to all be gone. Even Cervania and Cirillo could be gone too. But those first, that was 6 guys I mentioned, I think they'll all be gone. Paxton will stay longer than some of the others because I think, as he has stated publicly, he wants to compete at the MLS MVP level first. But the rest of those guys, Jesus, Seeley, Roberts, Tessman, and Pepe, a couple of years and they're gone. Everyone will be different. They'll all vary. 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Yeah, out. Paxton will be around the longest, maybe Cervania and Cirillo. All right. Sam Neighbors says, on the current roster, who is your prediction for having a breakout season? And who is your prediction for having a disappointing season? Well, Sam, does Paxton count? Can Paxton be my breakout player? I'm expecting a rebound from him if he can stay healthy. All right, serious answer, though. It's whoever wins the right back spot, which I believe is going to be Emma Tuamasi. I think he's got a really good chance of sticking that landing. Lucci clearly likes him. When he brought him back, you saw him play unexpectedly, both in the middle of the midfield and at wing. I really do think they're going to try him at right back, and I think he's going to land it, and he's going to hold that position, and that's going to be your breakout player. I don't think Eddie Mujoma is ready, so I think Emma's the guy. That's my breakout player right now. Ask me again at the end of spring training. I reserve the right to change my opinion and give you my real breakout at the end of spring training. Disappointing season. This sucks, but I'm going with Franco Jara and Brian Acosta because I don't think Jara is going to suddenly be great, right? He's not going to suddenly be the answer. And at his salary level, anything short of 15 goals is going to be disappointing. And I don't think he's going to score 15 goals. I don't think at 32 he's going to magically all of a sudden be the answer. I really don't. I hate that because he's going to be here for 2 more years probably, which sucks. And Acosta, it's everything is relative here in the words disappointment season because Acosta is what he is. He's now 27. That means his development is at the plateau part of his career. Prime of his career, yes, but no longer progressing. That means he's not going to improve. He might become more in form. That's possible. He might become more healthy, but he's not going to get better fundamentally. So he's going to play like he has played, and probably is going to be banged up like he's been banged up. So to me, that's going to be a disappointing season. Plus, he's going to be gone for some Honduras qualifiers, trying to get them into the World Cup, So that's who I expect to be disappointing, Jara and Acosta, which, that's no fun. All right, Caleb Friedrich. Any chance that Justin Che competes for the FC Dallas right back spot next season? I thought he did well there in a few games with North Texas Soccer Club, but he obviously projects as a center back. Yeah, that's right, Caleb. There's a chance, sure, but you nailed it. He projects as a center back. The club sees him as a center back. So using him at right back is a long shot. Him playing right back is just like Brisson playing right back, except a lot less likely. They're a lot more likely to play Brisson over there than they are Justin Che. Now, I do think Justin Che will play earlier than we think. I think the kid's on a great trajectory, and I think you're going to see him this year, I think. I don't know how much, but I think you're going to see him some. Now, if FC Dallas goes 3 center backs and you're going Hedges and Martinez or Hedges and Brisson and Che's your right center back, that's possible. That's where you might see him maybe a little bit because then the gaps are narrowed. He's got Hedges with him. He's got an outside wing back checking in. That's maybe where you'll see him. You'll see Che. Maybe as a pure center back, maybe as a 3-man center back. But starting as a right back, I don't see that in the cards. When you could just use Brisson there or Hollingshead there. Lucci has a tendency to not trust youth in defense. He trusts youth in offense and trusts youth up front and in the midfield. But on defense, so far, he has not really done that very much. Look how hard it was for Reynolds to get playing time. Even as good as Reynolds is, right, which is crazy good, they still eased him in when Reggie left. They still played Brisson when Reggie left. They still They had those 5 games they could have given Reynolds last year. They gave them to Brisson. So I don't see Che this year being certainly at right back, and maybe just a little bit at right center back if they go 3. That's where I think you might see him get bloodied in. Che will basically play the whole year with North Texas. That's basically, he'll start every game for them, or he should. That's what I think the plan is. All right, last question of the podcast, which has actually been longer than I thought. These have been some amazing questions. You guys have been awesome. Thank you for the great questions. AJ Swanson, assuming the $9.25 million sale for Brian Reynolds, I wouldn't lock that number in, by the way. What one player do you immediately turn around and buy with that cash to make FC Dallas better? Well, this flips back again to the earlier answers. A high 9. For me, that guy is Rogelio Funes Mori, who's now 29. That'd be the guy. Former FC Dallas player from Arlington. Great coming home story. He's also Argentine. I think he would be awesome. Awesome player for Dallas. But I don't think the Hunts will do that. I think he's too expensive. I think he's 5, 6, 7 million to get him. And I don't think the Hunts are going to do that. So less specifically, a high 9. I don't think Hara is the answer. I want to see a high 9 replace Hara in the system, or maybe go a 2-striker system. That's what I want to. That's what I would do with the money. That's what I hope they do with the money. I don't think they're going to use all of it. I think they'll use half of it. I think they'll go for a $4 to $5 million player, a DP. I hope it's a 9. Could be a wing. I think it's an offensive player. I definitely think it's an offensive player. We'll see. Cross your fingers. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that podcast. Let me remind you that Third Degree, the podcast, has been brought to you by Soccer90. 40% off site-wide for all Third Degree podcast listeners with promo code Third Degree on soccer90.com. That's 3RDDEGREE, just like the name of our website. Go get yourself some swag while the code's still good. Make us look good. Buy some stuff. Thanks, Pappy Check, again for the music. Thanks, Dan and Peter, who are not here today, but are usually my cohorts here on this podcast. Thanks, everybody, for listening to Third Degree, the podcast number 92. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the Q&A. Thanks to the Patreons. Join us at patreon.com/third degree. I think you'll like the content you get there. Hopefully you're doing it just because you like what we do, period. Thank you again, everybody, for the amazing, amazing questions. I hope that your 2020 was not as bad as it could have been. It was a horrible year for everybody. I know that includes me. There are people worse off than me. Certainly, there are people worse off than all of us. Certainly, people that have lost loved ones. This has been a very, very difficult year. I hope that y'all's 2021 is better than your 2020. Here's to a good year ahead. Here's to a good season ahead. Here's to the 24th season of Third Degree's coverage of FC Dallas. I really do hope you enjoy it. We will talk again soon.
Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.